Hi, and welcome to the Science of B2B podcast. I'm Kerry Cunningham. I head up Sixth Sense research now and thought leadership. So I'm really excited about this episode today. This one's called Lions and Zebras and Bears. Oh my, and we'll get right to it. I have two dogs. It never ceases to amaze me how they can become fascinated or aggravated or completely agitated or go crazy over things that I don't even know exist. They hear things coming from distances that I can't hear, don't have any access to, and they impact their mood and their behavior pretty strongly. But I don't have any. That's not part of my reality. And it always brings my mind back to the fact that however much we're aligned on certain things, like strangers coming to the door, for instance, we're not too fond of that one. I really don't inhabit the same reality as my dogs because their sensory systems are so completely different from mine. They're primarily relying on their senses of smell and their ability to hear things. And I primarily rely on my ability to say things. That results in kind of different realities. There's a great new book out by Ed Yong, and it's called An Immense World: How Animal Senses Reveal the Hidden Realms Around Us. So if you're interested in that topic, really fascinating book and goes into all of the different senses that there are and how it changes what the reality really is for different animals. The reality we experience is not the reality. It's a reality based just on what our senses are. And of course, that is exactly what happens in B2B. We experience a reality of who our buyer is and where our buyer is and which prospects are interested in us. That reality is formed entirely by the sensory systems, the sensory modalities that we have to bring the signals about buyers into our organizations. Now, for most organizations, the primary sensory modality is marketing automation. You've got other sensory modalities over in sales where they're doing some prospecting and trying to reach out to people. All of these are different sensory modalities that can bring you more information about your world. It can open up the reality about which prospects you should be focused on. And those things are all very good. They also have to be integrated. Now, there's a really great example from the animal world that is almost the opposite of the problem that we have in B2B. So I'll run through this example just for a second because I think it's really kind of fun. On the plains in Africa, on the savannah, where there are predators and there are prey, those prey often look like zebras or wildebeest, for instance, two very different animals. And a predator, take for instance, a lion. Now, for a lion to hunt a zebra, for instance, there's more involved than just seeing a herd of zebra and running up to it, diving into the zebra mosh pit and having at it. If they were to do that, they would probably get trampled and probably not get lunch. What they really need to do is identify when a zebra might be isolated from the herd so that they can chase it down. So a lion's senses are tuned to try to identify those individuals and to avoid jumping into a herd. Now, it would be absurd if a lion couldn't tell an individual from a species, but that's why those species that they prey on have the kinds of markings that they do. So the stripes on a zebra make it very difficult for a lion to see the difference between one zebra and another. When a mass of zebra are moving together at the same time, lions have a hard time distinguishing individuals, which de-incentivize hunting that particular herd. The lion's senses tell it, okay, well, we can't tell where the individuals are. We're not going to go chase and dive into that herd. So a lion has to be able to tell the groups from the individuals. And if you've heard any of these episodes of this podcast, you know that's where I'm going in B2B. We have the opposite thing that we need to be able to tell. We need to be able to tell when we have a group of individuals from the same organization who are on our website looking at the same solutions, the same content. Because if you're a B2B solution provider, it's very unlikely you're going to sell something to just one person from an organization without lots of other people getting involved. It's also the case that we cannot tell one individual on our website from another just by looking at what that individual does. In other words, if you've got two people on your website from prospect accounts and they're consuming content, you can't tell it from just looking at those two individuals which one is actually going to turn into a buyer. Our lead scoring doesn't do that. That is a bad answer, and look up our episode on how not to fool yourself about that one. So you can't tell by looking at the individuals. What you really need to be able to see is the group. But for most of us, we don't have a sensory modality that sees groups in B2B. Marketing automation is not that sensory modality. It's the wrong sensory modality for identifying B2B buyers. Now, some of the others that I've mentioned, if you've got third-party intent data that shows a group behavior, that's very helpful. If you've got de-anonymized web traffic and you can see that there are multiple individuals from the same organization on your website at the same time, even if you don't know their names, that's a really good signal. That is a signal that says, here's a group on our website. But ultimately, what you need is an ability to integrate those different sensory modalities, to integrate your leads with your anonymous traffic, with intent data, with syndicated content leads, all of those things. Bring them all together to form one coherent signal, one signal that says, this is the target, or this is the set of targets to go after. And that's what most organizations in B2B still lack today. There's another example from science, this one from human psychology, about the integration of these signals. There's a syndrome that many of you will have heard of called Capgras syndrome. And in this syndrome, people can't tell, or they think that people who are close to them in their lives, their mother, father, sister, brother, etc., are imposters, and they can't be convinced otherwise. When the researchers have looked into why this is, what appears to be the case is that the sensory modalities that detect that this person looks and sounds and all of that exactly like my mother is disconnected from the sensory modalities that associate that individual with the emotion that you expect. When you see your mother, see your father, see a loved one of any kind, you expect to feel a certain way about that. Now, we never think about this because we never have the experience of not thinking about it unless you get Capgras syndrome. Well, that's kind of also where we are in B2B. We've got a bunch of sensory modalities that are separated, but we don't have that integrated signal, or most organizations don't. We need a sensory system in B2B that identifies those buying groups, that notices when they're active, and that is able to integrate multiple signals so that we can prioritize prospects more effectively. All right, well, that's my message in lions and zebras and bears. Oh my. So thanks for joining today. Catch us next time on the Science of B2B.